Welcome to Balanced Life with Debbie Carlin Boyle. Conversations connecting to a healthier you. The show that gives you all the latest and greatest health and wellness information to inspire you to live a life of balance and joy. Debbie Carlin Boyle is a health and nutrition coach, personal trainer, and fitness instructor who helps her clients live in balance with everything that feeds us, in addition to the food on our plate. Please welcome your host, Debbie Carlin Boyle.
Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome. Hi, welcome to my show. There's my audience. They're here. They're just hidden, but we hear them. You've reached my show. This is Balanced Life with me, your host. I'm Debbie Carlin Boyle, and I have conversations that connect to a healthier you. I interview guests that have services and talents and products that can help you gain longevity with quality, and in my sort of little phrase that I've coined, help you age young. And we have a great guest today. As you realize, we are at 4 p.m., which we usually never are at. But because I have a very busy doctor who's with me today, and we had to do it at the end of the day for a practice because I really wanted to do a live show. And the reason why I do live shows is so you can become part of the conversation. So if you would like to call in, and if you're listening, take down this number, not if you're driving, but if you can, it's area code 323-524-2599. Once again, 323-524-2599. If you're watching us and listening, the number is going to be up on the screen. If you can always go to my Facebook page, it's on there, and it's also on my Instagram for you to call in. If you can't call in and you're listening live and want to get an answer live, then go to my Facebook page or my Instagram, Balanced Life by Debbie, D-E-B-I, and right there in the comment section, ask a question. And I check, I have my phone right here, and I check during the show to see what's in there so we can answer the questions live. If I miss it, we'll answer after the fact. I have my guests go on there and answer the question. And then if you're not watching live and you're watching on my YouTube channel, where I am streaming live right now, but if you're watching after the fact and you have a comment or a question, go ahead, make it. We want to hear from you. And again, we'll answer the question as soon as I get alerts, so I know as soon as they come, and then I pass them along to my guest. So the idea is to get everybody who's ever listening, who's ever following, involved in the conversation. A little different than other types of podcasts. So before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about myself in case you're new to the show. I am a personal trainer, a fitness instructor, and a health and nutrition coach. So what does that mean? It means that I help people find balance in their life with everything that feeds us, in addition to the food on our plate. And there are many things that have to come into alignment in order for us to have a life of longevity with quality, and again, to age young. So I help with that. I help with the fitness. I can help if finances are, something that's causing you stress. I can help with your creativity, with career choices. Anything in your life that may be a little bit lower on the totem pole, we try to bring that into balance. And of course, food being very important. Understanding what you put in your body has so much to do with everything else in your life. And I help you figure that out so you create some new habits for your life that may take some time, but we do small, sustainable steps during a period of time that will last you a lifetime, and we kind of crowd out the old bad stuff. So I would love to work with you, and to do that, you can go to my what do I have? A website. And it is Balanced Life by Debbie, again, DEBI.com. And just go on there. There's a little section. You're going to see a pop-up right away when you go on, and that pop-up is a 3-day detox diet. And it's summer. Who doesn't want to feel lighter in their clothes, on their feet, in any way? And it's all healthy, satiating food. There's a market list on there. It's breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 3 days. It's my gift to you. Just go on there, fill it out, and I'll pop it right back to you. So I am once again very excited to have you join us today, and I'm going to get on with the introductions because I'm really excited about today's show. So, did you know that skin cancer is the #1 type of cancer of any type in the United States? It is more than breast, prostate, and colon cancers combined. Today, my guest is Dr. Sonia Batra, who is the founder of a dermatology practice in Santa Monica, California, and a co-host of CBS's former long-running syndicated daytime talk show, The Doctors. Dr. Batra received her A.B., M.P.H., and M.D. degrees from Harvard University, where she graduated magna cum laude, and was elected to Phi Beta Kappa. As a Rhodes Scholar, she earned a master's degree at the University of Oxford, England. She completed her residency training in dermatology at Stanford University, followed by advanced fellowship training in Mohs, micrographic surgery, laser, and cosmetic dermatology. She has been selected as a top doctor in dermatology by Castle Connolly, Los Angeles Magazine, and Southern California SuperDoctors. Dr. Batra has appeared on numerous television and media programs over the years, including Dr. Phil, Home and Family, Inside Edition, The Talk, and ABC World News. So it is with my extreme pleasure to welcome my guest to the show today, Dr. Sonia Batra. And there's
Debbie.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Dr. Batra. There's your audience.
It's a pleasure to join you.
Oh.
Thank you all for listening, and thank you for joining this podcast with us.
I am so excited to have you here today. We talked, so full disclosure, Dr. Batra and I have known each other. We just figured it out. I think we're, 16 years, 17 years?
16 years at least, and counting.
Yeah, and so she's my doctor, and we're going to talk about all these wonderful things that and the reasons why you need a good dermatologist. But I am so excited because the first time I asked you, would you do my show, you just looked at me and said, of course. And I was like, okay, really? And then I realized I wanted to do a live show with you. So here we are. I'm so glad to have you here today. We have a lot to unpack and talk about when it comes to skin health and cancer prevention. So people are always asking me, as sort of a health coach and a person who should reasonably know these answers, what they should be doing for their skin, how they should be protecting themselves. All the sunscreen questions come out, and I don't always have the answers to that, and if I do, I may not be correct. So we have the expert here today. I'm excited about that, but before we get to the nitty-gritty of that, I want to ask a little bit about you, where you're from, where you were born, what your trajectory, what the track was that brought you to dermatology and to where you are today. So all those good things.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Super excited to join you as well. And I think you probably know after 16 years the answer to many of those questions. You're such an effective coach. But happy to be here, happy to share the information. And of course, if you ask me to come and help educate people and answer their questions, I'm always going to say yes. So I consider it such a privilege and an honor to be here on your show and to help educate people. I am a Southern California native, so I'm sitting here in my office in Santa Monica, California, and that's where I grew up. I'm a local kid, but did go, of course, back east into England, as you mentioned in that very kind introduction, so was gone for about 15 years. Stumbled into dermatology. It was an incredibly fortuitous stroke of luck, which at the time I thought was terrible luck, because my medical school has a lottery, which kind of determines the order in which you take rotations. And I got the second lowest, meaning worst, not lottery number in my entire class. So that meant that I got all my electives before I got my prerequisites. And so there were very limited rotations in medical school you could do without prerequisites. For example, you can't do a cardiology rotation unless you've done internal medicine. And so dermatology, by very good luck, was one of those rotations that didn't require you to take something in advance of it because it was so broad. And I rotated through and I fell in love. And I had no idea I would love dermatology as much as I did. I come from a family of doctors. I had a very multi-specialty background, but no dermatologists. So there was a lot of surprise, actually, I think, among my parents and my brother, who's also an ophthalmologist and a physician, when I announced that this is what I wanted to be. And by incredibly good luck, also was able to do the fellowship with advanced training in procedures and skin cancer surgery. I'm now double boarded in micrographic dermatologic surgery and dermatology. So it's just been an incredible ride, and I'm so, so fortunate to get to do what I do. To your point, there's such a huge demand because skin cancer, sadly, is an epidemic and only increasing. The good news about skin cancer is if you catch it early, regardless of the type of skin cancer you have, the earlier you catch it, the more curable it is. So that lends itself to a lot of satisfaction. There's a lot of demand, and there's also a lot of satisfaction in catching something and helping someone. So incredibly lucky to get to do what I do. And also because everybody has skincare questions, there's always a demand for education and for my services. So happy to share anything, answer any questions if people want to call in today.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's, I'm so thrilled. And again, the number here, if you're just listening, is area code 323-524-2599. You have a question. I do have a list of questions that listeners have put down ahead of time from our social promos, but call in, talk to Dr. Batra directly, get a conversation going with her. So let's, I didn't know that stuff about you. I didn't assume that you were a Southern California girl. I am too. I was born and raised in Beverly Hills and Encino. So, and that's, I'll tell you why I didn't assume why you were a Southern California girl, because your skin is impeccable. And so even before you went to medical school, so because I know you're a lot younger than me, so I guess you knew better than I did, maybe at that point. I don't know. I mean, like, my kids should know better, but they still, like the sun. You didn't know better when I grew up out here. I grew up on the beach in Venice, literally. And that was a daily thing for me to sit out there, which I'm sure you hear this all the time, with baby oil and reflectors, which was foil, and just and it was sort of a badge of honor to blister. But that is... Of
course, no, baby oil, iodine, the reflectors. I mean, everybody thought that was actually a really healthy thing to do. And like you said, there was sort of a badge of honor of that first good burn of the season.
Yeah, you'd go to school and, everybody would be peeling your shoulder for you, and... Yeah. And boy...
And even when I grew up, Debbie, I'm not that much younger than you. I'm a skincare fanatic, and I'm happy to delve into that in a bit. So I think I look a little younger than I am, thankfully, which is a good occupational hazard of being a dermatologist.
Yes.
But in terms of when I was a kid, too, of course, like, we had Bain de Soleil for the Saint-Tropez tan. Like, everybody wanted to be tan. There certainly was not a lot of discussion of sunscreen. In fact, I remember going to a sleepaway camp, and on the packing list was sunscreen, and I went to the Thrifty store on Wilshire in Santa Monica trying to find a sunscreen, and they only had the shade brand SPF 6. So I think thankfully we've come a very, very long way since then, but it wasn't, even talked about as much then in the 80s growing up as thankfully all of us now, and my teenage kids, they do know better. Whether or not they choose to wear their sunscreen is a different thing, but at least they know they should be wearing it.
Yes, exactly. It's just a more conscientious time, for us to understand the repercussions of what happens if you don't.
Yeah. And we thankfully have we have the benefit of hindsight and so much research and so much more information for sure.
Yes, which is so good, because having children, 2 grown daughters and a granddaughter, they look at me and this is what you don't want to do. I mean, we were just talking about yesterday, ironically, I had my yearly checkup with Dr. Batra yesterday, and we were just talking about how I don't like to show my legs anymore because they're so freckled. There's so much sun damage on my legs. I can't it doesn't matter how much muscle or how much I would work out, I have these freckles. And we're going to talk towards the end a little bit about the cosmetic procedures to get rid of things that bug you like that. But, the best thing to be is preventative and try to keep from that stuff happening.
100%, because as you're pointing out, sadly, those are all unwanted souvenirs from your childhood. So you really did accrue them very early, and it's a procedure. It's tough to start getting rid of them much later, especially on areas below the knee which don't heal as well. Where even in someone super fit like you, the circulation's just a little slower, so a lot more challenging to address.
Yes. So things not to do. I am definitely here to help you with that. So let's get into it a little bit and talk about some of the stuff that the audience would be really interested to know. And I think it would be the different types of skin cancer and what they mean. We have some photos that we can put up for those that are watching and what they look like and what to look out for. But and then we'll talk about the why and the how of it. So what are the different types of skin cancer we should be looking out for?
So I think those photos are really helpful because generally dermatologists think of skin cancers in sort of two categories. There's the really broad, really common category, which is non-melanoma. And that's the top two photos on your screen right now. By far the most common is called a basal cell carcinoma. And then the second most common is the squamous cell carcinoma. And what that means is non-melanoma means it doesn't come from pigment cells. So the other category, of course, melanoma, does arise from pigment cells, and all skin cancers, for the most part, are named by their cell of origin. And one thing I often will tell my patients, because people really worry about this, is they tend not to change or transition. So a basal cell carcinoma, which arises from the base cell layer of your epidermis, does not evolve into a melanoma, thank goodness. So even if you neglect it, which I don't recommend you do, even if you leave it for a long time, it's just going to grow bigger, it's going to erode more tissue, it is going to become more and more of a nuisance, but it doesn't become a more lethal or dangerous type of skin cancer. But when we talk about the types of skin cancer, the good news about the non-melanoma is, with some major exceptions, they tend to be less worrisome and less aggressive. They tend to be slower growing, and because they're not derived from pigment cells, they don't necessarily have that metastatic potential, meaning the ability to spread elsewhere in your body or harm your general health right out of the gate. When we talk about melanoma, that's from melanocytes or pigment cells. And the problem with melanoma is, while it's still curable if you catch it nice and early, with melanoma, the biologic behavior, meaning how quickly and how aggressively it behaves and how it evolves, is much less predictable. And with melanoma, those cells sadly have the capacity to go to your lymph nodes and to go elsewhere in your body, where they can really have devastating outcomes. So the different types of skin cancer, by far the most common, when we were talking about that statistic about how skin cancer is more common than breast, lung, colon, and prostate cancer combined, it's a really scary number.
It is.
But the reason we don't get a lot of press is because, thankfully, something like a basal cell, which is far and away the number one cancer of any type in the United States, is often completely curable and isn't something that's going to harm someone's general health. So you had a really lovely photo. The way I always explain basal cells to my patients is they tend to come up like a pimple that just doesn't heal. They look like a pearly, somewhat translucent, kind of shiny or kind of iridescent, if you will, bump. Sometimes the best way to even see a basal cell is just if you see this area where there's this altered sort of shiny texture on the skin and it starts to crust or starts to bleed. And so I think a good rule of thumb is if you get a pimple that's just bleeding and not healing, and it's there for like a month or 6 weeks, and you're wondering why it's not going away, especially if it's on the head and neck, which tend to be the most sun damaged, then it is the kind of thing you're definitely going to want to run by someone and not just assume it's totally harmless.
So are all skin cancers caused by the sun?
Well, so to some degree, yes. The short answer is almost all skin cancers have a component of ultraviolet damage. It's not always the single thing. Like, for example, sadly, melanoma, which is the most lethal type of skin cancer, is not always strictly in ultraviolet related places. We do know that a history of, for example, tanning bed use really increases your lifetime risk of any skin cancer, including melanoma. However, sometimes, like, for example, if it's under your nail or it's on your foot or it's somewhere where the sun doesn't shine, it can really be a combination of bad luck and genetics as well as sometimes the ultraviolet damage.
Okay. I was always curious about that because I remember one of my good friends, her mother passed away from melanoma, and it was like she had these really tight ears, and it was like just it was behind her ear.
Yeah.
Got missed, didn't know it was there. It like never hung out in the sun. She was from Spain, but didn't, worship the sun. And anyway, so I was just curious whether it's always about the sun. But
yeah, so while we know sunburns, especially sadly the type of burns you were describing that blister, are a huge risk factor for skin cancer, not every skin cancer is going to be in a place where you had a sunburn or in a sun-exposed area, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. So knowing that, 99.9% is caused by us worshiping the sun. And, even with what we know today, I think a tan is still oh, you look so good. You look so tan. I mean, that's just such a phrase that, is so common that makes people want to be tan. And now tanning salons, I have one of my daughters she has a monthly membership to a spray tan. So she gets...
Okay, but that's a spray tan.
Yes,
so
yes, yeah. No, not the bed. She wouldn't do the bed.
That's a much better way to go.
No, I know too much for her to go to the bed, and now she knows too much. But she gets a spray tan once a week for the weekends because she works really hard on the weekdays, and when she goes out with friends and does family stuff, she wants to be, because she's even lighter skinned than me. And she had red hair when she was born. It kind of fell out, but she has the red hair freckles. Now, you can be born with freckles like that, correct?
Yeah, you can actually. That is a common genetic variant, actually, with the red hair and the freckles, for sure.
Okay, because we had this argument that I put her out in the sun when she was little, and that's why she's freckled. And I said, no, sorry, you were born that way.
Yeah, I think we always want to blame our moms
for everything. I had this huge argument.
You're right. She probably was truly born with that predisposition, for sure.
I'm going to send her this clip. So what can we do to be preventative? I think there's so much confusion around sunscreen. Before I brought you on, Tony and I were having this discussion about sunscreen makes him feel so yucky because it's so thick, and so it just doesn't. But he uses it, but it doesn't feel good on his skin. What should we be using? I do have a question about what are some of the best products out there. What should be in the sunscreen? What shouldn't be in the sunscreen? How can you shed some light for us?
Sure. And so kind of, I think the most fundamental thing when I talk to patients about sunscreen, and sadly, I apologize, Debbie, you've heard this spiel now for 16 years, is I am a big fanatic about mineral block sunscreens. That means when you turn the bottle of your sunscreen over and you look at the active ingredients, try to look for zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. And that's because those are mineral particles that sit on top of your skin and physically deflect ultraviolet light. So they're already out of the gate going to block both UVA, which is the longer wavelength ultraviolet light, as well as the shorter wavelength UVB, which we think may contribute a little bit more directly to the development of skin cancer, unfortunately. And I think if you kind of just go in with that mindset that you're looking for zinc, titanium, SPF 30, then everything else is sort of icing on the cake. You can, Tony, spend some time figuring out what consistency works for you, because sunscreens come now in a myriad of everything from powder to spray to lotion to cream. And so that's kind of, it sticks. So that's kind of helpful, because the old stereotype of a stripe of white zinc that's super chalky and super thick and just gross, which we used to remember all the lifeguards sitting out at the lifeguard stations, you and I, Debbie, for sure, at the Southern California beaches, has been completely replaced. So I have a lot of patients who, as soon as I say a zinc or titanium sunscreen, they just sort of start to glaze over because they think they're going to look ghostly or chalky, or the consistency is going to be really unpleasant. And now, because the formulations are so much more cosmetically elegant, you can get really well formulated micronized zinc that really goes on so sheer. It can have like a little bit of a tint. The one I use is almost like a BB cream. Like, I don't even wear makeup. I just wear a lightly tinted zinc sunscreen every day. And those actually feel pretty good on your skin. But I always tell people, just spend a few minutes at the beauty store or the department store, the pharmacy, wherever you buy your sunscreen, and play with it, because the best sunscreen is going to be one you actually like to wear and use, not something you feel compelled to use and is super gross, because you're never going to use enough of it to get the SPF on the label. In terms of things to watch for, to avoid, I really don't love a lot of the chemical block ingredients,
Yes.
specifically things like octinoxate or oxybenzone. Anybody who likes to travel to reef places like Hawaii has found that those ingredients are actually banned now in Hawaii because they bleach the coral reef. But there's also data to suggest that in humans, they disrupt your hormones. They're endocrine disruptors. So in addition, some of the chemical blocks, ironically, are not stable in light, so they may break down and not even afford you the protection you're expecting when you put them on. So another good reason just to stick with the minerals, keep it simple, and usually you'll be in good shape.
Okay, because one of the questions that I got from a listener from Instagram is, are there any like sort of organic or healthy sunscreens that still, I know we need the zinc or the titanium or both, but that don't have other bad ingredients that, there's a lot of conscientious information out there right now, what we put on our skin with makeup and lotions and all kinds of things absorb into our bloodstream, and then they become endocrine disruptors. So is there anything that you would consider like the healthiest? And I'm not sure, we can name products here on my show. It's fine.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think, interestingly, most of the organic sunscreens are the mineral sunscreens because they're not chemically based.
Okay.
But you're right. I mean, there was a really interesting JAMA article just a few years ago that looked at the rate at which chemical block sunscreens were actually absorbed into the bloodstream at a much higher rate than when the FDA expected them to be when they were approved at the monograph decades ago. So your point is well taken, but generally when you stick with a micronized zinc particle sunscreen, you can certainly get many brands, that make them organically, meaning they're free of other chemicals and additives. And one really good website you can go on is the EWG, which is the Environmental Working Group website, and they actually rate sunscreens by how safe they are, how non-toxic. And in terms of brands, I tend to actually sadly trust the label a little bit. Like if it says it's been made organically, it should be. But your always best bet is going to be the zinc titanium. And that's what, if you go to any of the kind of Whole Foods or Trader Joe's and they market something as organic, that those are going to be the mineral sunscreens regardless.
Okay. As long as, good. Okay. That's the answer I needed, because a lot of my clients ask me about that. Because at this age, really, and we should always avoid, I always wear a rimmed hat. And and even on my granddaughter, I make her wear a rimmed hat when she's in the water for sure because of the reflection. And which is
great because I think sun protective clothing, knock on wood, is having a moment, right? Like we have so many more choices like that, and you're never going to have to reapply or worry that your sun protective blouse, like if you're wearing a rash guard or you're wearing a nice broad rimmed hat, you don't have to worry that it's getting melted off in the water or sweat. And even so, one thing about sunscreen that I always tell people, and Debbie, I apologize because again I've said this too many times, is it doesn't necessarily, you don't just put it on at 7 in the morning and then it's there impermeably for 12 hours. And so sometimes, in fact, if you're not reapplying your sunscreen, it can give you a false sense of security, because many studies have shown none of us, including many dermatologists, don't apply enough to get the SPF on the label. I mean, to get that true SPF that the FDA is approving, you should be applying the size of a shot glass, which is an ounce, when you go out into the sun to all the exposed areas of your skin. So just imagine your average bottle of sunscreen is 1.7 fluid ounces. That bottle is basically going to last you less than a day if you're at the beach and you're reapplying.
Yeah, it gets expensive.
Remember, you're supposed to reapply every hour if you're in water or you're sweating, and every 2 to 3 hours if you're just out in the sun and sitting at a park or something like that. And sadly, most people don't do that, right? Like many of us have that one bottle of sunscreen that's meant to last the whole summer, and it's covered with sand and it's in the hot light. And so that's where sun protective clothing, to your point, is really useful, because that's just going to physically shield you all the time.
They're doing that with kids now. I mean, your kids are older, and certainly mine are, but for my granddaughter's age right now, who's about to be 3, the long sleeve swimsuits are all a thing. And there's some protection, and they zip up, and they have collars, and it's like, where was that when I was a kid?
And so the thing is, not only do those types of fabric have narrow weave, so the light isn't penetrating the fabric, many of those, like if you go to an Old Navy or a Uniqlo and you're buying something that's labeled as sun protective, actually has little zinc particles in the fabric. So it has an actual UPF rating, which is like an SPF for fabric. And so not only is it a narrow enough weave that the ultraviolet's not penetrating, it should be deflecting some of those rays and keeping you cooler too.
Oh, it's great. I love knowing that. We're going to take a quick break from one of my sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to talk all about skincare and good skincare, what we should be doing every single day and thinking about for that longevity of having good quality skin. And we'll get a little bit into cosmetic stuff that's available because I want to talk about what you offer your patients. So we'll be right back after this quick message. Cicera Olio de Oliva is an extra virgin olive oil company with a mission to provide high-quality, current-season Italian oils to families. They have partnered with 2 centuries-old family farms in the Tuscany region of Italy to grow, harvest, and bottle their amazing oils. Founded by a nutritionist who has a love of the land, sustainability, nutritious foods, and of course, Italy, they strive for a peak freshness and high nutritional content in every single bottle. All of their oils are current season, extra virgin olive oil, bringing you a true branch to bottle experience, and I know firsthand. So, for an offer, go to www.cesarioliva.com and enter Balanced Life 10 for 10% off. I know you're going to love this healthy and delicious addition to just about any meal. All right, we're back with my guest, my dermatologist, celebrity dermatologist, Dr. Sonia Batra, and we're getting all the scoop today on skincare, sun damage, what to look out for to be preventative from skin cancers. One of the things that I want to mention or have you mention is what are the times that we really should be avoiding the sun, the times a day that...
Well, the main times are the peak UV index hours. So to usually reliably wherever you live, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is going to be when the sun is highest in the sky and you're going to get the most ultraviolet damage. So if you have a choice, like there's something you love to do outside, like play tennis or golf, those are great, but just try to set your court or your tee time really early or really late because you're going to accrue less damage.
Oh, that's great. I know when in my years when I was a sun chaser, not a snow chaser. So I always, I loved being in the water. I loved laying out in the sun. I went to Hawaii. By the time I was 20, I'd probably had been there 15 times. But it's closer to the sun. Yeah. So, and I didn't realize that. And I also, growing up out here when we were little, there were 4 kids in my family. So this time of year, every July, we'd go to Palm Springs, of all things. And I'd just live in the pool, like on a floaty, on a raft. And, thus, that's the reason why my body looks this way. But, I just never knew when I should or shouldn't be. I never thought about it, never cared. And I think it's an important thing to know that if you are going to go out on these summer days, that to try to avoid those hours. And
it's super helpful. And then seek shade, right? Like, so if you are out during those hours, try to find a shadier spot because you'll definitely accrue less damage.
Yeah, which is great. And everywhere I go, my friends, my kids, my family, anyway, extended groups, they all know I can't sit anywhere in the sun. There's always got to be a shady area, got to have an umbrella, and everything's just flip-flopped for me these days. Let's talk about skincare. Before we do, I want to give out the number again in case somebody's jumping in. The number here, we haven't had a call yet. We'd love to have a call from somebody. We're area code 323-524-2599. Don't be shy. If you have a question, this is your opportunity to talk to a top dermatologist about anything you may have. So give us a call. Let's talk about skincare and what, as we age, obviously wrinkles come in. I know good self-care has a lot to do with skincare. We want to stay hydrated. That's really important. That's the number one thing I tell my clients to do. Half your body weight in ounces every single day in water. Water, I'm sure, plays a huge part in your skin's vibrancy and, maybe warding off some wrinkles, coming in maybe a little later in your life instead of earlier. What else? What would be considered good skincare? What should we be thinking about and doing as we age?
Well, I think interestingly, good skincare is kind of the same good common sense that you preach as we age anyway, right? Like we know that exercise, especially as we age, keeps us active. It's also great for preserving the thickness of your dermis and your skin. We know a diet that's healthy and rich in antioxidants and fresh fruits and vegetables, really great for your general health, really great for your skin as well. And we also know that, interestingly, a lot of the really sugary and processed foods, while they take a toll on your general health, they also spike a hormone in your skin, as well as expedite the aging. There's something called an AGE, very appropriately named, which is called an advanced glycation end product. And we know that very high sugar levels in your blood actually create this modification to your collagen that ages your skin. So very interesting, Debbie. You talk about a healthy, balanced life on so many fronts. And, when people ask me, I'm like, it's the same common sense mom-like recommendations, like all the things that are good for keeping you healthy and active and vibrant from a general health standpoint will also help preserve your skin. Now, in terms of skincare tweaks, we talked about sunscreen already, but the same kind of things that you can use from an anti-aging perspective are also quite useful from an anti-skin cancer and skin cancer prevention standpoint. And so years ago, and again, probably 16 years ago when I first started seeing you, Debbie, I came up with this mnemonic, which I just called the ABCs, just because it was easy, because I think that the problem, one of the issues with skincare right now is you walk into any pharmacy or any skincare store, there's so many products that it's really overwhelming. It's hard to know what to do. And so you can kind of get just like completely stymied by too many choices. And kind of peeling it back, there are really three components to any good skincare regimen. That's the ABCs. And I just made this up. The A stands for antioxidant. And so that means something that's going to mop up ongoing oxidative or ultraviolet damage to your skin. So whenever we're outside, we talked about all that ultraviolet that leads to skin cancer. There's a constant assault, which is really kind of breaking down your defenses and your DNA and your skin barrier. And so things that sort of mop that up are vitamin C, vitamin E. There are many skincare products with everything from coenzyme Q10 to itabenone. So looking for something that has that antioxidant component is really useful. And I usually tell people use that in the morning before your sunscreen, because then as you're out and about, especially right now in the summertime, then as that assault is going on to your barrier and to your skin, you have that layer of defense. So like for me, I'll use a serum with vitamin C and vitamin E first thing in the morning, and then I put my mineral sunscreen on. And as I mentioned, that's really all I do. I have a BB cream that has a little bit of a tinted zinc, and that's kind of what I wear. But if you wear makeup, makeup goes last. The B is really simple. It's for block. So that stands for the sunscreen we already talked about, and look for a mineral SPF 30 or more. And then the C stands for cell turnover. So as we age, I think all of us understand and realize that the rate at which our cells turn over tends to slow down. And that's what kind of contributes to that more dull, crepey, kind of dried out appearance of the skin, because it's just not sloughing and renewing itself the way it did when we were in our teens and our 20s. And so a lot of the night creams I recommend really help promote that cell turnover. They help promote collagen. And so that's what that C stands for. And there are a number of ingredients that do this, but the really common ones that everybody's kind of heard of are retinol, which is vitamin A creams or vitamin A derivatives that help promote that cell turnover. That's what's in your prescription strength retin A, but it's also in what's your over-the-counter retinol. You could get something with an alpha hydroxy acid, like a cholic or lactic acid. Those also are fruit acids that help promote cell turnover. And then if you tend to be a little bit dry or a little bit sensitive, and those kind of exfoliants are going to be a little too irritating for you, there are actually a number of peptide-based or protein-based products that similarly help promote collagen and cell turnover as well. So that's kind of where you're going to have to gauge your skin and kind of know how sensitive you are in terms of picking which of those C products to try. But certainly if you're just doing those three things, it has a preventive, really nice anti-aging as well as anti-skin cancer.
It does. And are those products generally, are they prescription products or are they over-the-counter products or a combination of both? And
they're mostly over-the-counter, actually. So if you know what you're looking for, you can find really well-formulated products in each of those categories. The only asterisk is retinoids really run the gamut. They can certainly be well-formulated over-the-counter as retinols, but the prescription strength, slightly stronger, active form of the vitamin A, which is called retinoic acid, is a true prescription from a doctor. Know that also is more drying and irritating. So if you want to kind of ease into it and give your skin a chance to get used to retinols, you can always start with the over-the-counter stuff and ramp up and see how you do before you jump into the prescription strength stuff.
So with the retinol, those are the ones that your skin starts to peel a little bit. Is that correct? Or they used to?
It can peel.
Mine did.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's normal. But one of the things that helps offset the likelihood that you peel is really easing into any retinols very gradually. Like, for example, use the size of a green pea to your whole face. And you can use a moisturizer afterwards just to offset dryness and start really infrequently, like 2 non-consecutive nights a week, like Monday and Thursday at bedtime. And then as long as you're not peeling after a couple weeks on that regimen, then you can certainly increase the frequency and go from 2 nights a week to every other night and kind of ease and let your skin get used to it, and you're a lot less likely to be dry and peeling and irritated then.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I use like a rose oil on my skin, and I use nothing, and I really should. I'm about to be 66 years old. You know, it's time, especially with all the damage. I mean, yeah, when I was laying out in the sun, it was all about the face, really. Everything else was secondary for me. It was just having that tan face. So was there? So it's ABC. Was there a D that you had in your ABCs? And
not really. I'm pretty keep it simple. I mean,
yeah.
I think that if you're doing 3 things a day, that's enough to keep you busy and to give you a really nice preventive benefit too.
And I like what you said, and I agree with you 100%. I think hydration, good diet, and, you know, when my clients ask me, what should I be using on my skin? Because they're so confused, like you said, for, you know, looking over the counter, and you're just every single department store, Sephora, Ulta Beauty, everything that's out there. You go in that section and you just go, okay, you're so overwhelmed, and you can get somebody to help you, but it's usually more the product, that placement of, you know, what they're told to sell than it is about what's the best for you. There is a great app called Think Dirty too that I take into these stores, and if you scan the barcode, Think Dirty has, like what we were talking about, the website earlier, will show you the grading, because you know, an agency has already gone through how healthy or unhealthy that certain product is, because I think that's part of being overwhelmed. What are the other ingredients in there, even if they have the top ingredients that you just suggested? So I take my little app with me, scan the barcode, and if it isn't part of their inventory, they have you put in the number, and then they'll go ahead and add it to their list. So it's really helpful, and I've recommended that to a lot of my clients. But one of the other things I think is really important, the exercise not only helps your circulation, which I'm sure helps your skin all over your body, but also I think sweat, you know, our own sweat is good for our skin. Would you agree that just, you know, breaking a sweat every day is not only good from internally, but also externally for us?
Well, I think it depends, because there's some people with conditions where the heat and the sweat actually makes them worse. For example, rosacea.
Oh, yes.
So it depends on your skin, and you'll know. Like, I think that, however, if you're exercising to the point that you're sweating, there's so many downstream health benefits to that I'm a huge fan. And what I always tell people, especially if you're breakout prone, is just make sure you shower right away. Because while the sweat may be really helpful as kind of like a proxy that you've gotten enough exercise to really help your skin. Because we know that consistent cardio, like multiple times a week, actually improves the thickness of your dermis. That study has been done, which is so impressive. But we do also know that if you let that sweat just dry on your skin, and for example, you're acne prone or you're breakout prone, then it can really sit there and form a pore clogging film. And I think especially for like a young teenager, that's one of the harder lessons they learn, because that's when they first start to break out and they never had to wash their face after playing sports. And then they're really getting all these bumps under the surface of the skin from the occlusion of the sweat drying there. That's something like in terms of education, even with my own 13-year-old son, that you have to kind of keep in mind.
That makes so much sense.
Like I said, the other thing is if you have like kind of a flushing condition or a condition that is worsened by flushing, like rosacea, then you just have to be mindful. In fact, a nice tool is definitely do the exercise, but take a cold wet washcloth, where you could even take like a little insulated lunchbox with you to the gym, and then right after that workout, just put that cold washcloth on your face just to clamp everything down and wipe off the sweat, and then certainly wash your face or shower as soon as you can, so it's just not drying there and forming a pore clogging film.
Oh, that's good to know, because as you know, I do hot yoga.
Yeah.
But what they do at the studio that I go to, that I'm now working at, they do the ice lavender washcloths that they hand you. So now I always put it around my neck, and now I can just wipe off my face and take it off my face. Because one of the things I discovered yesterday was that I have athlete's foot. And it's because I teach spin classes several days a week, and I do hot yoga several days a week. So in combination. And of course, the weight training, so my feet are sweating in my shoes, or they're just sweating on my mat.
Yeast and fungus, athlete's foot caused by fungus usually. They love a moist, warm environment. So,
and I'm
to change those socks.
Accommodating it. I'm accommodating them. So, unfortunately. So, yeah, those are good things to keep in mind. In the few minutes we have left, I'd love to talk about some of, the things that you offer cosmetically for people, for wrinkles, I know you have a whole procedure you do with PRP on the neck, which I'm interested in, and just if you could talk about some of the things that you offer if people want to get a hold of you and maybe tap into that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, certainly we offer the whole array of tools. So everything from combating skin cancer, like we were kind of briefly talking about, to just really nice ways to rewind and refresh. Because I think, especially as people are living longer and healthier lives, sometimes we look in the mirror, and I feel this way all the time, and you see some changes in your skin and in your appearance, and they don't really match how you feel, especially if you're doing your best on all those other fronts in terms of exercise and healthy habits. So in our practice, I mean, we do everything from, really the excellent skincare regimens, which I think are very complementary to anything done in the office, to kind of degrees of aggressiveness in rewinding the skin. So we have a whole arsenal of lasers that, depending on the wavelength of the laser, can target brown spots, can target blood vessels, certainly can target wrinkles. And even when we talk about targeting wrinkles, we have lasers that are what we call non-ablative, where they're not actually taking off the top layer of the skin, but they're sort of heating it from underneath to jumpstart collagen, all the way up to fully ablative, fractional resurfacing lasers, where we're actually rewinding and taking off that top layer of the skin. So that's the kind of thing that it really depends on how old you are, what your goals are. Like, are you looking just for a little refresh? Or are you looking for a 5 to 10 year rewind? And so that's how we tailor the technology accordingly. You also alluded to something called PRP, which is an acronym that stands for platelet-rich plasma. And that's a really nice tool in the arsenal for someone who doesn't necessarily want to do an outside filler or an outside product that they're using to sort of prop up the skin. And what we do with PRP is we actually draw your blood, and it has a chemical that helps concentrate out the growth factors that your body and your blood use to heal wounds. And then we inject that right back into you. So PRP is a really nice tool for people who might have thinning hair, for people who are noticing just aging of the skin, which is leading to thinning of the skin, to crepiness, to some sagging. It's a very satisfying tool either to use on its own as injections or even alongside another procedure. For example, when we do some of those laser procedures I was mentioning, I love doing PRP alongside, because not only are you sort of creating an injury and trying to get an outcome, then you're giving the skin back all the growth factors it needs to heal. So it's a really synergistic approach, because you get a better outcome than you would from just the PRP alone or from the laser alone. And so it's a nice combination.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And you said for thinning hair, so you would do it on your head.
Yes.
Okay.
So PRP or PRF, which is platelet-rich fibrin, also derived from blood. Both are very nice tools. Usually it's like 4 to 6 weeks apart. You'll do a series of 3, and you actually will inject those growth factors right back into the scalp. And it's quite a nice way to slow down and improve upon the normal thinning that occurs as we age. So sadly, what a lot of people perceive as hair loss as they get older is actually technically under a microscope what we call miniaturization of the hair follicle. So Debbie, you have beautiful, thick, lovely hair, but you shared with me it's a little thinner than it used to be. And that's kind of the normal, sadly, process, because we go from having thick, coarse terminal hair to, as we age, many of those follicles will kind of what we call miniaturize under the microscope, and they become the very fine, non-pigmented vellus hair, which we all have all over our body, everywhere pretty much, but like our lips and our palms and our soles and places like that. Mm-hmm. And so that's the peach fuzz you see, sadly, on areas that aren't like the coarse hair. And so if you biopsy someone in an area where they have hair loss, you often can see those hair follicles in the process of getting smaller and thinner. And so the idea of those PRP or PRF injections is sort of interrupting that progression and giving back the growth factors so that you really maintain more of your thick, coarse terminal hair. So people really love that process and procedure as well.
I love that. This is all sounding really enticing to me. I love that you do so many things. And I would love for you also to give the audience a way that they can reach you and get the whole menu of everything that you offer. And I highly recommend at least once a year you go in for a full body check. No matter where you are in the country, in the world, if you're listening to this, it could be a matter of life and death. Tony lost, it was your sister, right, to melanoma. Oh. So, it's out there, and it's really important that it gets caught in time, as you were saying at the top of the show, that it can really be aggressive and spread, and we don't want to see that. So by getting checked, you won't see that. So hopefully you can catch things in time. How do people reach you that are just listening and not up on the screen right now?
Sure. And I so appreciate you raising awareness and couldn't agree more. Just, if you have a questionable spot, please get it checked sooner rather than later. A once-a-year screen is certainly a great idea, especially in someone who has a family history of skin cancer or a history of childhood burns. Anybody who needs to reach me, you can find me on social media for sure at Dr. Sonia Batra, and it has all my contact information from my office. My office phone number in Santa Monica is area code 310-829-9099. And certainly online, our website is Batra Skincare, but if you just Google Batra Dermatology or my name, Sonia Batra, I'm sure you'll find a way to get in touch. But really appreciate the attention. Thank you so much for the platform, and thank you to all the listeners. Hopefully this was helpful, and we're always receptive to any further questions.
Oh, you are so helpful. Such a wealth of information. Leave us with just final word. It could be a word, a phrase, a comment, just final thought.
I think final thought is, if you do one thing, just really try to protect your skin from the sun, and it pays so many dividends, both cosmetically as well as medically from a skin cancer prevention standpoint. So sunscreen, hats, protective clothing, seek shade, avoid those peak UV index hours. You'll be doing yourself a huge service.
Thank you so much for your time, your expertise, your energy, your wealth of information, everything, Dr. Batra. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad we did this.
Debbie. Really, really kind. Thank you.
Really, I'm just thrilled. And you, my audience, I want to thank you. And I want to remind you to keep going out and finding those conversations that connect to a healthier you. All right, everybody, we'll see you in 2 weeks, 2 o'clock in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody. Thanks.